Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. One of the problems why democracy has not worked in Zimbabwe is that the electorate are incredibly ignorant, naive, and gullible. This is not trying to denigrate anybody, but it's just speaking the truth the way I see it. The electorate have believed some of the things that are so outrageous that we honestly say to yourself, this is unforgivable. This is like sheep believing the wolf that once you have elected me, I'll become a vegetarian. Ben, what are some of the outrageous lies that some of our leaders have preached to the people and they believe them?
Good day to everybody. Thank you. I feel, I first of all want to say, I agree with you when it comes to our fellow citizens, countrymen. The level of naivety and ignorance is profound. I mean, the lies are so easy to just conjure up and people will believe. And the easiest lie, I think, is we can win rigged elections. And after so long of trying to do so, and not even coming close is it's just amazing. And we keep going over and over again. I think that is the biggest lie that people can never believe, that this time around I will win, and for sure you lose, and then the next coming election it's the same story. This time, the last time what they did, they cannot do it again, and they do it 24 years, and they're still doing it. And now we are going into 28 or 29 years, they will still be doing it because we believe such nonsense. I think that is the most criminal offense, number one, that the people of Zimbabwe have.
Well, in my view, one of the biggest lies is ZANU-PF saying to the people they will hold free, fair, and credible elections. And people believe it. Here is Mnangagwa in 2008 admitting what he did that year, how he blatantly cheated in the March vote count and then orchestrated the wanton violence. And yet, when the men came back in 2017 after the war, the military coup, people believed that he was going to deliver free, fair, and credible elections, and were clamoring that they should give him another chance. Just listen to this.
2008 padakaita ma-elections pakaposa papinda Tsvangirai ndandiri election agent ya president. Ma-results abuda tiri party headquarters vamutasa vanga vari secretary vedu ve-administration vamutasa muripi yafona ndiri kwarusapi komogwenda kwarusapi seka ma-results achibuda kudai vanga aiwa zvako izvo munangagwande zvako endaenda kumusha ofisi vanga vabisa zvinhu zvavo zvose watofunga kuti zani yadini yaparara. President ofona zvakamira sei kati ndomamira zvakaita takatodini katida sei manje mama ndikati abvudzai baba nditaurira baba gadzirai politburo cabinet musarangarira zvimwe zvinhu gadzirai chi cabinet. Asi nangoda kuti muzive kuti 2008 maresults abuda vamutasa vakatiza.
As a country we face a generational transition. Vana vesa vari kuma below 35, they are crying out for help. The country is in a mess. Arusuru, we know we are inheriting a mess. We know this country has been left with nothing.
I'm assuring you that starting from tomorrow, you'll see a different nation from what you have seen or read on the news about these results and everything. Where we are going ahead there, the situation will be very different. What we said to our people, they could not see with their own eyes. We are going to act as we see it fit. We are prepared to go the whole distance.
Many people were killed, as many as 500 opposition supporters were murdered in 2008. And yet here is somebody who still come out and try to convince the whole country that he can hold free, fair, and credible elections. He is a Democrat. And people believed him. That, to me, is absolutely shocking.
Yeah, shocking it is. That's true. But I mean, at the end of the day, each and every one of us has a choice to make, right? I believe, yes, some people are forced to do, other people's bidding. Yes, I do understand. But the majority of us have got no excuse. It's the same, look at how many people participated in rigged elections, knowing fully well that ZANU-PF is going to rig and was going to rig as usual. Most people were not forced. I would understand maybe the rural folk, and not all of them, some of them. So, from that group, we had over 4 million voters. And from that group, we cannot even say half of them were forced, less than half. So what is the excuse of the majority that they find themselves believing such nonsense from either side? I don't mind which side, but why do we believe such nonsense? That is what baffles me the most. That since we're now going 24 years since, let's say, we have had an opposition, a serious opposition, right, that we perceive to be, which is debatable as well, right? We are still doing the same thing, yet there is countless number of individuals, organizations that have given us a sound advice each and every time. Why is it that we just keep on going for the same killer punch every single time? What makes us so sure that this time we will win rigged elections when we have not yet identified what happened the previous time? To me, it's inexcusable. Our level of foolishness as a people is there for everybody to see and everybody else to explore, to exploit. And this is why we are being taken advantage of. Ask the people. We have a problem.
Well, they come to the electorate. One of the problems I've been really disappointed with is how, since the formation of MDC, people have been clamoring for change. It has been the slogan of MDC ever since it was launched. Change, change, change. Chinja, chinja. And yet, it's shocking how few people understand what change they wanted. During the GNU of 2008 to 2013, it was the golden opportunity for MDC leaders to have implemented the democratic change that we've been talking about all along. They failed to implement even one. What is interesting there is that the people themselves have failed to hold the MDC leaders to account for that. Because, of course, they've got to understand what the changes are. Much more how they are implemented. And in this particular case, how MDC leaders failed to implement those reforms. So if you don't understand what the changes are, you're not going to hold the MDC leaders to account for failing to implement something that you don't even know. And so this issue of now, 24 years down the line, you find people still have no clue what the democratic changes we are talking about are. And so they are still hoping that the opposition will deliver change. What change? You still don't know what those changes are. I mean, in this particular case, it's not rocket science to figure out that if we are going to have free, fair, and credible elections, we need ZEC officials, for instance, to be independent enough to deliver free, fair, and credible elections. If ZEC are the referee, they must show their independence and not that they are in ZANU-PF's pockets. That should not be rocket. When ZEC failed to produce a verified voters roll, when ZEC failed to register voters in constituencies, or rather areas where the opposition have got strongholds, that should be questioned by everybody. Anybody who has got any eyes will immediately say, wait a minute, if the ZEC was impartial, you should be registering everybody. You should be producing a verified voters roll. What are you ashamed of? Those are the changes we are talking about. And yet people are failing to articulate that, even now with the benefit of hindsight. That I find to be really disappointing.
Yeah, and I must add, another factor that leads to such, foolishness, if I may say, is blind loyalty. Just because I like the person, I don't mind whatever message he's carrying or he's preaching, and I would not even ask a question. that kind of loyalty. I will follow no matter where you go, even if it's going to take you, down. You're going to go down with him. That type of loyalty, I think, is one of our biggest, downfall as a country or as citizens who are aspiring to live in a democratic, nation country. I mean, oppositions in Zimbabwe, or let me just say political parties in Zimbabwe, they don't have to say much to get us going, to get us charged up, to get us worked up, to say, I'm following this. All they just have to do is simple lies. And we are all sold. We are all game. Let's go for it. I mean, I think that is the most disappointing part. I really think that is the most disappointing part. We sell ourselves so cheap. The message doesn't have to carry much weight. Somebody will just stand and say, well, I talked to Trump and Trump says he's going to give me 15 billion. Has he seen Trump? Do you know the facts that he's seen Trump? You don't know. And you know what? Besides him being caught and being asked, no, it doesn't matter, just like the same way, with the Gold Mafia documentary. It got shown to us, but it doesn't really matter. He's still our guy. So both on the political divide, I said I don't mind which political party it is, but I think the citizens of Zimbabwe have really, really got to wake up if they are ever dreaming of a democratic country. Because democracy needs people that are knowledgeable, people that are able to think for themselves, to analyze, be critical, and ask for accountability. You said this. When are you going to deliver? Where did you deliver? How much have you delivered so far? Vision 2030, we are almost gone through. How much have you done to achieve? Where are we? What future plans do you have? Those are questions that are supposed to be asked by people that are switched on, not blind loyalists that will carry sanction banners, yet you do not know anything about sanctions. People that will cry for change, yay, when people are talking nonsense. I think, no matter how much we paint, I believe, the political parties, they are doing whatever they need to survive. And the easiest thing is to sell lies, because Zimbabweans will believe it anyway. So I can't blame them for sometimes taking advantage of us, because we allow them. I feel sorry for those that are forced to participate in rigged election, because they risk losing their livelihood, they risk losing their houses, they are forced into this matter. Not somebody that goes willfully, willingly. No. I think it's inexcusable.
So if one was to answer the question that was raised here, why is it so easy for leaders to lie and get away with it in Zimbabwe? I think the answer is very clear. The electorate have shown again and again that they're totally ignorant, naive, and gullible. It should be emphasized here that when the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, came up with democracy, it was not everyone who could vote or could have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. It was people they called citizens. And these are individuals who had demonstrated that they can see the bigger picture. They are not so naive, ignorant, and gullible. But even they, the citizens, it was emphasized that citizens must be educated. In other words, the process of educating the citizen was not something that, you go to school and say, okay, you passed, so you're okay now. No, it's an ongoing process. And to make sure that it was an ongoing process, the Greeks promoted the idea of freedom of expression, freedom of association, with a view that in that freedom of expression, freedom of association, will enrich the mind of the citizen. In our case, when we got our independence in 1980, I think we could have said, okay, we want those people who understand, who have been well educated, understand the issues, to have the right to vote. Instead, we had universal suffrage. Everybody above the age of 18 could vote. I think it was a good idea, because where there is the political will to educate the voters, by getting everybody involved, they will learn the important issues. The problem we have, or we had in Zimbabwe these last 4 years, is that we had political operators who had no intention of making democracy work. ZANU-PF never had any intention of giving people a meaningful say in the governance of the country. ZANU-PF's intention has always been to exploit the electorate. If you look at it, ZANU-PF's stronghold is in the rural areas. And it's out of poverty. And there are no more than medieval serfs in the rural area, beholden to the ZANU-PF leaders and proxies. So in the case of Zimbabwe, the electorate was never educated. They were deliberately kept ignorant, fearful, and gullible. So unfortunately, instead of universal suffrage becoming a blessing, it has become a curse.
But I believe we cannot let ourselves off the hook that easily. Okay, fine. Like I said before, I understand that there are those that are forced, there are those that are frog marched, and some that actually if you do not do that, you risk losing your life, or you risk losing your household, your home, such type of things. Yes, I would understand. But here we have, over 2 million people that voted in urban areas, Chamisa strongholds, let's say. But they knew that ZANU-PF was going to rig these elections. So we cannot easily say we are going to cut it down the middle and say, it's not people's fault. people, somebody is going to take accountability, and we cannot put it on, those that want to be part and parcel of the ruling, right? They just take advantage of us. And we must ask ourselves, why? How come? What made you and I participate in rigged elections in the first place? Knowing fully well that this was going to happen. And what is going to stop us from doing it in the future? Because I know the moment, somebody says let's go and participate in 2028, this time around things will be a lot different, because this time we are very, very sure. Last time we were sure, but this time we are very, very sure people will go and participate, but knowing fully well that ZANU-PF will still rig those elections. So my problem is, I don't think it is wise for us to just let it go as simple as that. Somebody has to take accountability to say, why did we do this in the first place? We cannot blame it on literacy, because I believe, even the very well educated, they were queuing up in towns. So really, there is no excuse.
Here is Margaret Dongo talking about the rural voters.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
To be made. When you're talking of the rural electorate, as long as ZANU-PF retains total economic control over them, they will never be able to participate in a meaningful way in the governance of the country. The solution is that all the people in the rural areas should be given title deeds to the land. This is the one thing that they can have that can economically empower them and give them that economic empowerment will give them the confidence to exercise their political power as well. But when it comes to the urban electorate, I think ZANU-PF has no control over them. The opposition has only control over them in the sense that they are taking advantage of their ignorance and naivety. But that is a problem that the electorate themselves must address. It is unbelievable that somebody, even those urban voters in the leafy suburbs of Mount Pleasant, Borrowdale, Greendale, whom you think have had a good education, high school, and many of them even way above that, university qualification. they will have the common sense not to be so easily cheated, not to be so easily gullible to believe Chamisa's blatant lies, for instance. It is unbelievable that most people who voted for the opposition last year actually believed Chamisa when he said he had plugged the vote-ranking loopholes. How can you be so naive? And worst of all, some of those people even today refuse to acknowledge that they were indeed foolish to have believed that lie. I think it only compounds the problem. We're coming back to the cartoon we showed earlier on. You're so sheepish that you actually believe the wolf can become a vegetarian. That, to me, is the tragedy of Zimbabwe.
I'd like to thank you for establishing that and for bringing up this topic. I think it's very useful for those that really want to learn, right? We have established that there are people in Zimbabwe, there are citizens in Zimbabwe who cannot help it. They're actually forced to do the bidding of others. They are forced because their houses will be at stake, their livelihood is at stake. So they would rather, give away that right to their vote, so that at least they can survive for today and tomorrow. I understand. But those that have, that have got no excuse, why do we do it? Why do we keep on doing the same thing over and over again? Do not we get tired of getting hurt or of getting the same outcome over 24 years? Is a very long time to learn if somebody wants to learn. You know, why do we keep on repeating the same thing? And for sure, if at this pace, we will repeat this come 2028, making that now how many years? 28 plus years, going on 30 of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Surely we have to stop at some point. We have to stop at least to think, why are we doing this? Some have an excuse. What is your excuse of doing this? After all, you're just perpetuating your own suffering, your own kinsmen suffering, your own family suffering. I think, it's something that we really, really need to think about. And I think it's a very, very good topic, a timely topic, if I may say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. I think I'll give the final say to Dr. Nevas Mumba, advising the people of Zimbabwe what they need to do since the rigged elections of 2023. And I'd like to emphasize the point there that going into 2028 without even one token reform implemented and being conned into believing that somehow Chamisa has got strategies of winning rigged elections is the most idiotic thing that we could ever do. We choose to behave like sheep, and the politicians have exploited it. Here's Dr. Nevas Mumba repeating the advice that he has given so many times regarding Zimbabwe.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me be clear that the changing of any dynamic or situation in any of our African countries is a preserve of the citizens of that country, in this case, the Zimbabwean people. An election observation team goes there to support the process by observing and being able to release a statement of our observations that, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we raised several issues of transparency and also the independence of the Electoral Commission and things which happen in many other countries, you know. But at the end of the day, once we produce the report and make it available to the Zimbabwean authorities and eventually to the Zimbabwean people, it really remains the preserve of the Zimbabwean people to fight for the freedoms that they need themselves and to correct those issues that have been observed. The reason why we have multiple observation missions is to ensure that, you know, there's a comparison, you know, taking place between the SADC report and the European Union report, the African Union report, and then they can see that those issues that repeat themselves in all these reports, it's up to the Zimbabwean people. And this is where I appeal to all political leaders, not only in Zimbabwe, especially the elections that are coming in Mozambique, they're coming in South Africa, in DRC. We have to make up our minds that, look, at the end of the day, once the people in the country are given an opportunity to monitor the elections, because they also monitor, it starts not during the day of the elections. They must make sure that the constitutional lacunas that can affect a good election are dealt with months before the election, and they must fight to ensure that there's a level playing field. They should never wait for the time when the election is taking place. They must also insist that the electoral commissions and the governments in those countries abide by international norms in holding democratic elections. And this fight must be more vicious before the election comes.
I'll say amen to that. If Zimbabwean people decide to behave like sheep, they will participate in flawed elections in 2028 and give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship and perpetuate their own suffering, our own suffering. That is the reality. There is absolutely no excuse why, in this day and age, we are failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections. The demands for free, fair, and credible elections is not rocket science. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much, Benjamin.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.